Could we possibly have a college football playoff without Alabama? MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Tide following the very exciting but very crucial loss to LSU at home, 46-41. We bring in Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama to talk Tide. Stephen joins us as he typically does on a Tuesday afternoon, right from the Bama practice facility after talking to the players. So, Stephen, how you doing today?
Doing well, Mark. I'm fine, wearing a smile here. There are some fans out there that still trying to get over what in the world happened, but the sun is up. It's a little bit cold in the atmosphere, but I'm well.
So the sun did come up in Tuscaloosa on Sunday morning.
It did.
Okay. All right. Just want to double check on that. Sometimes some fans need to take a bit of a pause and understand that no program, no coach, no team is perfect, and that there are other people being compensated on a student athletic scholarship. And there are other tremendous athletes and programs out there, and we got to see two of the very best, obviously, on the field in Tuscaloosa in that 46-41 game. So, Stephen, what are your takeaways from what was a tremendous football game among two of the great programs and talented teams in the country?
Well, I'll say this. Despite all that went wrong in that game for Alabama, and there was a lot that went wrong, a fumble in the game, an interception that was thrown, a mishandled snap on a punt attempt, could not get a defensive stop on third down in the fourth quarter to give yourself a chance to, win that game. But despite all that happened, the heavyweight prize fight that was the second half of Alabama LSU was absolutely outstanding. I mean, after the Tigers punched Alabama in the mouth, knocked it on the mat, you're down 33 to 13 at the half. You're down by 20. The way Alabama was able to pull itself back up and fight the entire second half and put itself in a spot to where it could potentially win the game, that was something special. That was Ali Frazier. That was a heavyweight prize fight.
It was exceptional. And of course, because of the high standards and expectations, the loss is magnified, but it has to be taken into consideration that they're outside of possibly Ohio State would have the argument that there hasn't been a more complete team that has played extremely well against a very difficult schedule, a run of quality opponents like Texas, like Florida, like Auburn, as LSU has, that everyone has had them either in the number 1 or 2 slot. And for them to come in and do exactly what you said, to throw the haymaker, for Bama to take the haymaker, to be able to come back and fight down to the end, I think we also need to take that into consideration, because we hold Alabama to such a high standard of perfection that these kids get out there, they give it their all. They're not perfect, and they certainly took LSU's best, and they delivered right back, and they just fell just barely short.
They did, and that was one where, if you look at a few players here, Mark, that really emptied the tank in this matchup. Tua Tagovailoa coming off just recently a repaired right ankle. He went out there, 418 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Najee Harris played like a grown man in that football game, 149 yards rushing, a career high, 2 touchdowns. Devontae Smith, I know a lot of times people look at Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs III, and Jalen Waddle, but when Alabama is in a bind, when Alabama needs a big play and they need it urgently, somehow that football always seems to go in the direction of number 6, and Devontae Smith tends to always make that type of play. And his second 200-yard performance of the season, you look at the job that he did defensively, Anthony Jennings, Xavier McKinney, Christian Barmore, when he was out there was just a number of different guys, and when you look at them, they have the look on their face of, Coach, I emptied the tank, and I did everything that I could do.
It's a tremendous synopsis on your part, because you brought up the 3 exact players that I wanted your take on from the offensive side of the football. And for Tua to go out there, and he was noticeably bothered more and more by the ankle as the game progressed, and it seemed as though the more he was bothered and the more it limited him, the more he focused and delivered, and the more accurate and the better his decision making. It was like, okay, anytime a great athlete takes some injury factor and some limitations, they even sometimes revert better into the zone. And that's what Tua showed us, certainly against LSU. Najee Harris, just the combination of the explosiveness, the power, the grit, the toughness, his ability in a very small space to make cuts and shift his feet and change directions is exceptional. And again, Devontae Smith sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, but he certainly responded as well. And the one drop he had, he made amends immediately and converted a touchdown. So it's just a tremendous effort on the offensive side of the ball. Some of the defensive deficiencies have to be taken into consideration, but also the excellence of the LSU offense. And you got to see Joe Burrow up close and personal for the first time, at least this season, the new version of the Joe Burrow in this offense. And just give me your takeaways on what kind of player he's become.
The guy's a gamer, Mark. The guy's an absolute gamer. And when you look at it, a lot of the teams that have beaten Alabama under Nick Saban have had quarterbacks that they just ball. They just find a way to win, whether it's Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, Bo Wallace, Deshaun Watson. These guys just find a way to win. Throw Cardale Jones in there as well, and it's incredible. Joe Burrow had moments where on third down, it looked like Terrell Lewis would have him for a sack, or somebody would get back there to make a play, and he hops out, like a baby kangaroo and takes off 15, 20 yards for a first down, or he makes a sidearm throw to Jamar Chase, who completely had a whale of a football game. Jamar Chase over 100 yards received. It's just, when you thought Alabama had Joe Burrow, he found a way to extend the play, to extend the drive, and just to not be denied a win in that game. So the kid's an absolute gamer.
I appreciate the common thread that you found in regards to the quarterback play against Alabama in the 9 to 10 times that they've lost in this decade, except for that LSU game of the century 9-6 overtime game. It has taken an extraordinary effort by the opposing quarterback in a special way, in their own special skill set, whether it was a Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, Cardale Jones on down the line, to barely eke out a win against the Alabama Crimson Tide. So, Stephen, when you look at the scenario across the country, looking at the other conferences, looking at Alabama's elimination from Atlanta, unless, of course, the unthinkable happens and LSU loses twice, of course, your thoughts about the college football playoff rankings, what it's going to look like tonight, and what possibly has to fall in place for Alabama to make it, and maybe if the players or Nick Saban had any thoughts about that in particular. I'm guessing Nick Saban said we're on to the next game. Forget about this college football playoff talk. We can only control what happens on the field.
Well, when you look at the college football playoff, Mark, I talked to a couple of people close to around the Alabama program for the last couple of days, and the guys really are hopeful. One guy in particular told me he would be shocked if Alabama was to fall past 4. I can basically see them either 4 or 5, more so 5 on my end. You've seen how LSU, the number 1 team in the country, you're talking about playing against a ranked Auburn, a ranked Florida, of course now a ranked Alabama, and you win. And you start the season off with Texas, though Texas is a 3 multiple loss team. It's still a big brand name program to a lot of people. So you look at Oklahoma, you look at LSU, you look at Ohio State, you look at Clemson, who still has not lost yet. You have to factor in those 3 teams. The 4th team is very well could be Alabama. You look at Georgia, may have a say in there. Oregon and Utah, both of those Pac-12 schools have played very strong. So it's going to be highly interesting to see how this unfolds tonight. Me personally, I felt like if Alabama would have rolled over after the first half against LSU and the Tigers continued to just, destroy and handle the Crimson Tide like a rag doll, then Alabama would definitely be out of that conversation. But just seeing how this team found its heart this team found its fight and made it a game in the second half and put itself with a shot to actually possibly pull off an epic come from behind win. There are still some guys in that college football playoff committee that think that because of the fight, Alabama's still there, but we'll have to see how it unfolds.
Absolutely. This is not the NFL. A loss is not a loss. Losing 45-10 is not losing 46-41 as Alabama did against the number one team in the country, or what we expect to be the number one team in the country. That comeback and grinding it down to the final second, that I think is going to pay dividends, possibly if things break right elsewhere. I personally think that there are 5 teams that are better than everyone else. They're not necessarily the teams that are going to be in competition, but I think Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson are the most talented teams in the country, but that's not necessarily going to line up that way because I think you need to earn your way into a playoff, and Oregon/Utah/Oklahoma or Baylor may be able to do that. We got Stephen M. Smith on the line from touchdownalabama.com. I encourage you to jump over there to touchdownalabama.com. Check out Stephen and the rest of the staff there and their coverage of Alabama football on a daily basis. Stephen, you mentioned, and we both talked about the gamesmanship of Tua Tagovailoa with the ankle issue. Set us up for what we possibly could see considering the opponent and the status of the ankle, and Nick Saban's thoughts about playing Tua this week.
Well, Saban mentioned on Monday that Tua did not practice due to some soreness in that right ankle. He could practice today, not sure, but I will be out there seeing if 13 is on the field. To me, just judging off of how physical that game was, weather, of course, changing. Now, you will be in Starkville, Mississippi, so it might be warmer, give or take, but coming off this type of physical football game where he gutted out the performance that he did, I, for one, would rest Tua this week, go with Mac Jones against the Bulldogs, lean some on Najee Harris, as we have seen down the stretch. He has really surged to become that complete back that Alabama fans thought it was getting upon him signing in the 2017 class as the number one overall prospect in that class. So I would look to, run the football, create a situation where you get, Mac Jones comfortably in the football game. And that's just my take on it. But when you look at from Coach Saban's viewpoint, possibly look at practicing Tua on today, see how he looks, see how much the soreness has dissipated or died down, and we'll go about it from there.
Over the last decade, we saw Dan Mullen do a masterful job at Mississippi State, a very difficult place to win considering the competition in the SEC Western Division, the lack of population, although the elite talent in the state of Mississippi is as good as it gets, but the depth of football talent there in the state because of the population limitations and being able to, despite resource gaps versus, again, the powers in the SEC West, LSU, Auburn, and Alabama in particular, to be able to win and be competitive, go to bowl games on a consistent basis and build upon the foundation that Sylvester Croom built. Joe Moorhead had a really nice team last year that many people pegged as a dark horse in the SEC West. Tremendous defensive front. Of course, the quarterback play of Nick Fitzgerald. The program and this particular team has definitely taken a step in the wrong direction, but maybe even the program in general. Joe Moorhead is being talked about and going elsewhere, not being able to sustain his job. Stephen, your thoughts about the Mississippi State program and this 2019 edition in particular?
It's tough because when you look at Joe Moorhead, he comes in from Penn State, a very strong offensive mind. So people felt like, okay, year 2 for him. He's got his quarterback in Tommy Stevens, the guy that he was with at Penn State. And then you have, Keaton Thompson, of whom not playing quarterback right now at all. I think he's in the transfer portal, if I'm not mistaken, but correct me if I'm wrong on that, Mark.
I believe so.
In terms of Keaton Thompson. But you bring in Garrett Schrader in. So you have Garrett Schrader and you've got Tommy Stevens, two guys that are, different in terms of the quarterback play. Tommy Stevens a bit more of a thrower. Garrett Schrader can run, but also throw a little bit. So you have, two things to prepare for. The grace for Mississippi State is Kylan Hill, a very, very good running back, probably one of the better running backs in the conference. A guy that's he's over 1,000 yards this season. He's averaging 114.1 yards per game. Very shifty, very elusive. A guy that can make plays. I got a chance to speak with Jared Maton, Alabama safety, in interviews today, and he talked about Kylan Hill is one of those guys. If you're a defensive back, you got to bring your feet. You got to bring your pad level. You have got to hit him because he is tough. He is strong, very low center of gravity, but he is also quite shifty. And after, Alabama missed 25 tackles against LSU, I mean, try just utterly hearing that, and it blows your mind, especially the way that Nick Saban has been such a stickler for wrapping up, tackling, coming up with bad intentions, but also securing the play as the final result. And you're missing 25 tackles, including quite a few of those against Clyde Edwards-Helaire, of whom stands at only 5'8", but shifty, elusive, hard to bring down, and he's got some moves on him as well. So Kylan Hill kind of brings the very same skill set to the table, and that's kind of a saving grace there for Mississippi State. It does have some guys on the outside that can catch the football, including Gitley, and wide receiver, very, very good guy there on the outside. In terms of defense, they've got some playmakers that can affect the passing game and do some things on the back end that can cause some problems for Alabama in terms of the receiving core and the quarterback play, whether it be Tua Tagovailoa or should Alabama go with Mac Jones in the matchup. But the biggest thing for Nick Saban in this game is fundamental tackling on these receivers, and most importantly, Kylan Hill at running back.
Stephen, anything else that we've missed on the Alabama side in regards to anything that you heard out of the players today or injuries that we need to be aware of?
Well, as far as the players today, just a sense of urgency has really hit these guys. And I'm not saying that the sense of urgency shouldn't have always been there. It has been there, but it's like it's taken a second level since this loss, and they know that we are not in control of our own destiny anymore. All we can do is convincingly play our best football in these next 3 games between Mississippi State, Western Carolina, and Auburn, and hope that some scenarios fall in the direct spots to where we have a chance. So, Alabama, after this loss, even in player interviews after Saturday's game, you can kind of sense in the eyes of a lot of players that sense of urgency that needed to be there in big form throughout the year. It has finally started to hit now.
As Stephen and I discussed before we started to record, the last trip to Starkville in 2017 proved to be maybe the most monumental game for that particular edition of Nick Saban's championship trophy case, in going to Starkville down 2 scores and the likes of Jalen Hurts and Calvin Ridley with some heroic plays late in that game to pull it out against a really good Bulldog team as Alabama escaped. And even though they did not win the SEC Western Division, of course, moved on to the College Football Playoff and secured another national championship. And it all was because of plays made late in the game by Hurts, Ridley, and others in pulling out a game in Starkville that shouldn't be that high on the drama scale this time around, Stephen.
Shouldn't be that high on the drama scale, Mark, but you never know.
Yep.
That's why you come to these games as prepared as you possibly can. And even I myself, in reporting on this team, you come to this in the media as prepared as you possibly can. Because I go back to that 2017 matchup and what a game Nick Fitzgerald and Eris Williams had. And the moment that, Devontae Smith, that was the first of, game-winning touchdowns by him, and how people started to recognize this number 6 kid. I mean, Judy's great, Ruggs is great, Waddle is great, but this number 6 kid, you gotta circle him and put a Sharpie by, and this is somebody you don't want to overlook.
I remember Ridley a couple times making some tremendous plays and maybe converting a fourth down where he got loose in the secondary and
Oh,
made a
yes,
huge
he
play.
did. Yes, he did. That critical fourth down where he stopped and started back up on a dime and got out of bounds, preserved the clock, and he was huge.
Good stuff. Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. I definitely encourage you to jump over there and please soak up the Alabama football coverage right there as Stephen sets us up for the Mississippi State encounter. Stephen, we appreciate you stopping by, sir.
No problem, Mark. Thank you.